This is the Sixth Man Show, an Orlando Magic podcast, with your hosts, Kevin Tucker and Jonathan Osborne, covering all things Magic basketball. By fans, for fans. Go Magic! What's going on, Orlando Magic fans? You guys are back with the Sixth Man Show. Today is September 23rd, 2024. Jonathan Osborne here, riding solo on today's intro. No Kevin Tucker, but we will have a Kevin Tucker update in just a minute here. And in just a few minutes, we will get to today's episode, which we have a fantastic conversation with our friend Philip Rossman-Reich from OrlandoMagicDaily.com and Locked On Magic. As you can see, no Kevin Tucker here. If you've been listening to the show for any length of time, or if you listened to our last episode, you will know that last Wednesday, our friend Kevin Tucker had his big open heart surgery that he's been preparing for a very long time, but really this entire summer. And Kevin Tucker, not even 24 hours removed from a massive open heart surgery, they had that guy up and walking around. So guy is just, he's an animal. If there's anything that I can say about Kevin Tucker and the way that I knew that he was going to approach this surgery and the recovery, I don't know that there are many people that could be better suited to take on something like that. He's just such a strong person. So proud of him. And he even released an update to all social media over the weekend here. We shared that to our social media channels. So I thought the best way to do this is to let you all hear from Kevin Tucker himself.
Hey everybody, just wanted to say thanks so much for the support and the prayers. This has been quite an ordeal. Yeah, the recovery is crazy. I definitely came into it with an expectation. It has surpassed that. It's brutally tough. But the last 24 hours have been the best, and it should continue trending that way every day forward, hopefully. There's a lot I could say right now. Basically, long story short, for those of you that may remember, I ended up getting referred to this hospital in Atlanta, Emory, excuse me, University, to have the special Ross procedure done. They got in there on Wednesday, and they basically weren't able to do it. They essentially ended up doing 3 different surgeries on my heart on Wednesday. My heart was stopped 3 times. It was a 9-hour surgery, and so it just beat the crap out of me. But ends up that I have a mechanical aortic valve now, which was not the original goal, but it'll still be fine. The long-term outlook is still very good, obviously, for someone my age. So we had another little scare on Friday. There was a mistake with some nurses that ended up almost being really, really bad, which was not fun. But again, that's all behind us. It's Sunday morning at 4:45 now. I slept for probably 10 hours last night, which is game changer. So yeah, I'm feeling, considering all things, feeling pretty good. Still have a long way to go, but anyway, just wanted to get on here and have you guys hear from me, and again, just want to show my appreciation and my love for all of you. Okay, have a wonderful Sunday, and I'll talk to you soon.
So that is a word from our friend Kevin Tucker as he continues to recover from his open heart surgery. The guy, I know he's probably laying in the hospital bed listening to this right now, probably upset that he couldn't help me with this episode, couldn't do all the things that he normally does, because that's just the way that the guy is wired. Very, very rarely ever thinks about himself. I love you, man. I'm so proud of you. I'm happy that the surgery, although maybe it didn't go the way that you wanted it, but it did go well. And once you get over this initial recovery period, you're just going to be feeling so much better. You're going to be feeling more like yourself again. We appreciate all of the listeners and followers that have reached out to check on him and for updates and to wish him well and praying for him. We can't tell you enough of just what all of that means. So appreciate Kevin making that update so that we could share that with everybody. And just, again, so happy for you, man. Proud of you. We're continuing to pray for you that the recovery goes smoothly, that you have as little pain as possible. And yeah, man, just super duper proud of you. And now, without further ado, here is my conversation with our friend Philip Rossman-Reich. And now, Orlando Magic fans, we are joined by a very special guest, friend of the program here, senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com and the host of Locked On Magic, my friend Philip Rossman-Reich. Philip, how are you? How's your summer been going?
It's been going good, but I'm not gonna lie. Like, I see that light at the end of the tunnel right now, and I'm just like, oh, basketball is almost here, man. We're like almost here. Just one more week, and the Magic will be back in our lives every day.
With everything that's been happening in terms of like the NFL season, my New York Giants, although they picked up the win today as we're recording this on Sunday, they've let me down to start the year. So for the last couple of weeks already, I've been looking ahead to basketball season. And as you and I are recording this, we're 1 week away from Media Day, where we'll be next Monday. And that feels like the official start to the season. Kind of everybody's back at school, first day of school kind of vibes. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. But I wanted to take our listeners back to last season. It's been a little while since we had you on the show. First and foremost, I just want to ask you, like, yes, you are such a professional. You do such a great job covering the team, but you don't hide the fact that deep down, you're not even deep down, you're still a Magic fan. So from that side of Philip Rossman-Reich, how much fun was last season?
I mean, it's certainly the most fun I've had covering a team. I think with journalists sometimes, like, you are balanced, you don't cheer for anyone. But I think as human beings, it's impossible not to want success for the people you're around. I think that if you don't want success for the people you're around, you're just not a good person, and you're probably not going to do your job well anyway. But being around winning teams is fun. And, I think that, we all kind of sensed that this team was going to get there eventually. And, it's been so long since the Magic had been successful in any measure of that word, in the way that they were successful last year, that I think, I know for me, like, I try to be a realist. I tried to guard myself and say, like, yeah, the 4 seed's possible, but more likely than not, let's just get into play-in. Let's see them be a little bit better, win more consistently, take this like baby step. And they took such a huge leap that it made you shift your expectations and shift what you thought was possible. But it also just made everything feel like gravy. Like, I would even tell people, like, yeah, it'd be disappointing if the Magic lost to Milwaukee, had to go to Miami and be in the play-in tournament. But, like, that would still be gravy. That would still be like, this was incredible. We got exactly what we needed out of this season. We saw this team really take this identity. And, I've said this to so many people, like, there's nothing more fun than a team figuring out how to win for the first time, because there's no expectations. Like, you're just happy to be winning, and you're like, this is fun. Let's just keep doing it. We've already beaten what everyone thought we could do. And you could just kind of feel that energy throughout the whole team and around the whole building and around the fans and around everybody. It's just like, especially after the last decade, like, this is just fun. It's fun to watch this team and to be excited about a game. Like, I love the guys during the rebuild. Like, they're all good people. But there are so many Marches and Aprils where I was just like, I have nothing new to say about this team. Can we just put this thing out of its misery? Like, I don't like, this is the first guy that comes to my mind because he said something, but, like, I don't need to be talking about Rodney Purvis. Rodney Purvis, good dude, worked hard. I don't need to be talking about Rodney Purvis. Like, this is what you want to be a fan for. And you just could feel that energy and that excitement, and it lifts your spirits. It has to, by definition. And it just gets you excited to as a reporter, it gets you excited to cover the team every day, because you're not, rehashing the same things, or, looking ahead to the draft, or, talking about the T word. This is what the sport is. And so it was so much fun. I mean, it helps that it was a fantastic group. Like, the vibes were every bit as real as every fan perceived them to be. Like, it was just a very, very good and fun group to be around. And just a really special season in Magic history. Like, again, there's nothing more fun than a team figuring out how to win for the first time. But after the wilderness the Magic were in, like to just feel the energy of that team and that building, especially in the playoffs. It was just like, okay, this is how it's supposed to be. Like this is we are on the right track. We're doing everything the right way. This is what makes you a fan at the end.
When I think about what made the season so special, because everybody that I talk to, whether it be people with in the organization working for the team, whether it be, Magic fans that we keep in touch with over the course of the off season, everybody uses that word. Like, it felt like a special season, that we may have more successful seasons in the future, but I don't know if anything will ever feel quite exactly like that. And when I think about what that is it a mix of the expectations going into the season and the way they exceeded those, or just the vibes around the team? I do think part of it was like the 35th anniversary season and a lot of those details that went into that. What is it for you that really made that season fun?
I mean, I think a lot of it is that this doesn't feel like a flash in the pan. Like, it feels like this, like, the best example I can give of this is, I was in Cleveland for Game 7, and the game was clearly trending in the wrong direction. I was raced down to the press room before the game ended. And I saw all the players walk into the locker room, because the media room that they had set up in Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse was across from the locker room. So we saw all the players walk in, and you could see everyone's heads were down, and as they should be. Like, that was a loss. Like, it was, the finality of the season was there. And when I went the next day to listen to all the media, to exit interviews, because I wasn't able to get back to Orlando in time, which is another story entirely. Despite my best efforts, I was not able to get back in time. To listen to all those exit interviews, like, all the depression was gone. Like, if you go back and listen to all the exit interviews, there would be no way you would think that was the day after a devastating Game 7 loss. And it's because everyone has bought into the long-term vision of this team. Mo Wagner said this, and this always stuck with me. He said it, I think the first time he said it was after the win over Boston in the in-season tournament. And it stuck with me throughout the season, and he repeated it several times in his media interviews throughout the season. The success last season wasn't just about last season. It wasn't just about what that 2024 team did. It was about the foundation that they built over 3 years. And I think a lot of those players kept that perspective, once they got some distance and some separation from the loss, because the loss was devastating, like, no doubt about it. And it should be devastating. It should be a motivator and a driver to be better. Like, they did a lot, but there's still more to do. But you could tell, like, that they said, we're not done here. Like, this isn't the end of our run. This is just the beginning. And that, to me, is so exciting. Like, look, the 2019 season was really, really special, but it was a flash in the pan. And we all kind of said, like, the 22-9 finish to make the playoffs was incredible. And we should celebrate that season. It was a fun, like, 2.5 months. But, like, even heading into 2020, like, we had a lot of things, or like a lot of things have to go really, really right for them to take that next step. And even then, they're going to need moves to take the next step. Like, we all, like, I don't think we were in denial about it, but it was very, very clear there was an expiration date. And certainly by the time like we got to the midpoint of that 2020 season, we were like, okay, we're stuck in the middle here. We're not going, this team is struggling to take the next step that they needed to take. And they're fine being a playoff team. Like, it's like, especially after what the Magic went through the decade previous, it's fine. But it's clear that there's another level they had to reach that they were struggling to reach. This season doesn't feel like that. Like, the 2024 team feels like we're going to be back, and we're going to be back for the next 5, 6, 7, as long as the key players of that group are together. This is a playoff team. Like, I don't think anybody is sitting anywhere around the league is sitting anywhere saying the Magic are not a playoff team, barring, like, tragic injury. This is a team that's going to be a factor in the Eastern Conference for a very, very long time. They may not be ready to buy them in 2025 for next season. There may be some things they have to do to get to the next level, but everyone's essentially saying like, yeah, this is a playoff team, a potential top 4 seed, a potential factor moving forward. This isn't the end of the road for them.
I think a lot of Magic fans went into last season with maybe an idea of what the core was. And I think a big part of what was so exciting about last year and something we have to look forward to going into this coming season is it feels like the core is a little bit more solidified. Maybe that's an element of it too, but I wanted to ask you, because you've seen a lot of Magic basketball, obviously, over the years. Where did this year rank for you, like all time, and in terms of like your favorite Magic teams?
Ooh, favorite Magic teams. A lot of people compared this team to the Heart and Hustle team before the season began. And especially like once we, even like 5 games in, like people are like, yeah, this team plays so hard. They're like the Heart and Hustle team. They're just going to beat you on sheer effort a lot of nights and just out try you. And look, the NBA is an 82 game season. There's a lot of veterans who are just like, I just need to get myself to April and will do enough to get to April. Teams that try harder are going to outperform. The Heart and Hustle team's obviously just special because it just came out of nowhere. Like none of us expected that team. And it was just, we knew like that was a 1-year deal. Like we knew that, like, I think a lot of us probably thought they'd keep Ben Wallace, but like a lot of those players we knew were just there to be traded off, and the result didn't matter. So the fact that we got a fun year was just a bonus. It's hard for me because I think for a lot of fans, this season's going to remind them of like gonna be their like 1994, 1993 moment. Like when I grew up, like my first basketball memories of going to Magic games was like Shaq's rookie year, Shaq's second year, like the first playoff year. And just how much fun it was to go to the building every night, knowing that the Magic had a good chance to win. Like I've said this a million times, like now the Magic should go into every game expecting they can win. They're not going to win every game. They're not going to be favored in every game, but there's not a team in the league that they can't beat or that they shouldn't feel like they can't beat. And like I was 4 or 5 years old when the Magic drafted Shaq. Like that was my introduction. Like those are my first memories of Magic basketball, was like just going to the games, believing my team's going to win. And so I imagine for a lot of fans, like nothing's going to replace that for me. Like I love this team to death. It's not going to replace 94, 95. Like those are my teams. That's when I was like cemented and like I'm stuck with this team forever. I imagine for a lot of young Magic fans, that's what last year's team was. I often compared this year's team to Dwight's first playoff team in 2007. And really it was more like the 2008 team where, it took a few years for Dwight to make the playoffs. And they had that in 2006, which was incidentally my like senior year of high school. So it was my last season, like being in Orlando every day. They had that really fun run at the end of the season and were like the last team eliminated from playoff contention. They were eliminated like the last week of the season, or like on the last Sunday of the regular season. The season ended on the Wednesday, I believe. So like with 2 games to go. That was like when that season ended, I think a lot of us were like, okay, that was fun. That was a good kick to end the season. We cleared away some of the trash. Like Dwight Howard feels like he's starting to come into his own. Next season is going to be the year. Next season, we're going to make the playoffs. We're going to start building to this thing. And obviously they made the playoffs the next year. It was their 500 season. Like you look at the natural progression of a team. It's like they have a fun finish to the season. They're like starting to show signs that they're putting things together. They have a 500 season and then they have their big breakthrough season. I think that this team kind of skipped the 500 season. I think the way they finished the 2023 season, when they went 29-28 over the last 57 games, that was their 500 season. So they kind of skipped that step and went straight to like, oh, we're going to win the division now every year. Like we're that good. I think that's where I kind of put this team, is like, this is like this is like kind of the Dwight Howard figured out how to win seasons. And now, obviously, we got like Paolo and Franz have figured out how to win. And so now we'll see how they respond to that and how they grow and get better now that they know, oh, we do X, Y, Z, we're going to win almost every night, or, essentially every night. And that's kind of where we're at now. And then I think, again, like these seasons are really important for like building your fan base for years. Like I know I've mentioned this to a few people, like the Magic essentially lost like a whole generation of fans. And if this team can bring some people back in to be Magic fans again, like that's going to be great. And obviously you do that by winning on the court. So, this is like the beginnings of the 2009, the 1985 teams. Like, like the T-Mac teams were fun because T-Mac was just individually great. But this is very much like 1994, 2000, 2006, 2007, 2008, where we can see what the future is, and we're buying in and investing on the ground floor as they begin to really take off.
You mentioned this a little bit a moment ago, but for me, a big takeaway this season was just the way that the city won, but like just the building came alive during big games. Going back to opening night last year, opening night doesn't matter who you're playing. It always feels like a big game. It's the first game of the year. So even though it was Houston, the building was rocking. Going back to Black Friday, coming off of the win over Denver, you beat Boston. That was a big deal. You felt like you still had a chance there to advance in the first in-season tournament. And then obviously games 3, games 4, game 6 of the playoffs. You're in that building most nights. What was that like? Like seeing that building really come alive for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's special because like again, like I'm a professional. I can put this to the side when I'm writing. It still eats at me when like there's that game 2 years ago when the Sixers fans were doing the MVP chants for Joel Embiid. It eats at me when you hear "Let's Go Heat" chants. Like that stuff, just like when the Knicks invade, it eats at me. Like it hurts my soul just because like I'm an Orlando resident too. Like it hurts my soul to see people not repping their city, and I think the players have talked a lot about this too, and how important it was for them to kind of start to silence those other fans. Like no one's under any no one's pretending otherwise. Orlando is a relatively young city. Like there aren't it's still very much a transplant city. There's still a lot of people who move into Orlando. There's essentially been only one generation of Magic fans of people who were born in Orlando to be Magic fans. And again, like we can have another episode talking about the sociology of Magic fans, but like a generation was skipped. Like, we had 10 years where the team was just not worth watching. And those people became LeBron fans or Durant fans or, fans of players, and not their hometown team because their hometown team wasn't worth cheering for in a lot of ways. To see the arena start to come alive, like you could feel it. And you could even feel it last year in Paolo's rookie year. And some of it was curiosity because you have the number 1 pick. Like the number 1 pick's going to draw some people in. But, I think the time when I really felt like, oh, this isn't fake. Like this isn't like, oh, they're interested in the number 1 pick. It's like people really do believe in what this team is building, and what they're seeing here was the game against Dallas last year. Because that game was moved up to 5:30 because of the hurricane that was coming in. And it wasn't a sellout by any means, but it was like still like 5,300, 6,000 people in the building for a 5:30 Tuesday afternoon game with a hurricane coming. They were loud, and like they were loud. Like you could feel their energy in the building, even though it wasn't a full building. And I remember, and the Magic won the game, which obviously helps. And I remember sitting there thinking like, this isn't just early season, because the Magic were already like, they were, in the midst of the 5-20 start at that point. This isn't, early season curiosity. This Paolo, like, let's be real, this Paolo Banchero kid is really good. And I like what I'm seeing from how this team is building. And I think the team is only confirmed that support from there. Like I've always believed Orlando is a sleeping giant, that Magic fans show up when they need to show up. You might have to give them a reason to show up. And again, the last decade, they largely haven't had a reason to show up. There's a lot to do in Orlando. But the Magic are as hot a ticket in town as anything else. And Magic fans have always been very, very passionate if you give them a reason to be. And the building can get very, very loud. I know Kia Center has long been criticized for not having great acoustics for basketball games, but they'll be loud when they need to be loud. And Like they showed up, they the Magic gave them every reason to be invested, but they showed up and put that faith in them too. And again, the players have been so complimentary of saying like, we knew we had to earn that, but once we had it, like we could feel it. We could feel that lift they were giving us. And nothing's ever going to be the arena. The arena is just a very special place, but the Kia Center has been as loud as I've ever heard it for a Magic game, and for any event that I've been to.
You talked about Paolo a little bit. I want to drive the conversation in that direction now. Obviously, all-star in year 2, maybe flirted with some all-NBA third team consideration there. Incredible first-round playoff series. Just update us on your thoughts and feelings about Paolo and what you think about his long-term potential.
Yeah, I think the hot take that I had on Paolo for a long time, and I think people were a little surprised by this, is I thought he was going to get a triple-double before he got a 40-point game. And he got the 40-point game like a month before he got his first triple-double. Like literally, like that he had that game in Cleveland in December, and it was just like I know Aaron Gordon had a few 40-point games and Victor Oladipo had a few 40-point games. It was not the same. Like it was very clear like this Paolo kid is figuring it out. And I think it's I think a lot of Magic fans have been very defensive about Paolo all summer because now that people have seen him or they're starting to watch his stats, like they're trying to pick apart his game. But I was always so impressed with Paolo's demeanor. Like nothing, like everything just kind of rolls off him. Like, he's still 21 years old. He's going to make mistakes and he doesn't let those mistakes affect the next play. I've also been, when I did his study in college, when I watched him at Duke, I always thought he was a better passer than he got credit for, than he got used for. But I had been so impressed that even though Paolo could go out and score 40 when he needs to, and I think part of the next evolution in his game is figuring out which games, understanding when he has to be that player and when he has to be another player. And he's figured that out in Sacramento. He figured that out in Cleveland a little bit. He wants to do right by his team. And yeah, he may take some quote unquote inefficient shots, and the Magic give him the ball and give him a lot of reign to go out there and play and figure out what a good decision is and what a bad decision is. And I think that's going to make him so much better and really put him in those upper tiers of players. The Magic treat him like the player he's going to become. And what I've been so impressed with Paolo with is he wants to be that player. Like he doesn't want to be, I think Carmelo Anthony is a good comp for him in a lot of ways, but I don't think he wants like the reputation Carmelo has. Like he wants to be, he's not going to be Luka Doncic, but he wants to be that kind of player where he is capable of giving you a triple double one night and then scoring 50 the next. Like that's the level of player he wants to be. And like, that's a really high bar to get to. But I think if you ask him, he'd rather get a triple double than score 50 in a game because that means he's getting his teammates involved. And if you ask him, he'd probably say like, I'd rather score 15 in a game and win than score 40 in a game and lose. And I think like that's so important in your star player because he sets the tone for everything. And, in his second year, I've just been blown away by his maturity and his growth and how he's expanded his game. And I think, again, the playoffs showed him he has another level to get to. And he was able to kind of scratch the surface on that. And I think that's going to make him a lot better this year because, again, I think the frustration that I've had listening to people who don't watch Paolo every game is just like, you guys got to understand, he's 21. You're acting like this is it. Like this is his peak. He's never going to be better. He's going to get a lot better. I said this a ton during his rookie year, and I'm going to say it again about his second year. This is the worst Paolo Banchero is ever going to be. He is never going to be this bad again until he's like aging, until he's old, until he's my age. He's going to get a lot better. And yeah, there might be some growing pains still, and that's okay because the destination is going to be really, really fun.
I think that's what drives a lot of fans and drives me crazy, especially when you see the critiques around it's usually Twitter, let's be honest.
Yeah.
The fact they act like he has reached his potential, and it's like he's 21 years old. You have no basis to make that type of claim. But yeah, I found that pretty funny. And one thing that I think is underrated when we go back to the draft a couple of years ago, and as people were talking about Paolo's fit amongst this Magic team of, oh, he's not exactly a spectacular defender and so on and so forth. An underrated aspect is he might be a better fit culturally than he was a basketball fit at the moment. And now they're building around his strengths and the things that he does well. But I think that's really important to remember.
I mean, to that point, like this Magic were the second best defense in the league last year. Like
he's so much better than people gave him credit for coming out. He's better than people give him credit for.
Yeah, exactly. And even beyond that, like his willingness to try. Like he's not known for his defense. The Magic aren't sticking him on the best defender. Like they have Jalen Suggs, who's an all defensive team player. They have Kentavious Caldwell-Pope now, who is an all defensive team caliber player. They have Franz Wagner, who is an all defensive caliber team player. I am going to bang that drum.
Jonathan Isaac.
They have Jonathan Isaac. They got a lot of guys who can defend. Like Cleveland tried to target him and it didn't work. Like he held his own. And yeah, he may lose his concentration off the ball a little bit. There's plenty of things he needs to refine, but like, it's not like he's a sieve and isn't trying. Like he's bought into the defense as much as any player on this team. And again, your team leaders, and it's weird calling a 21-year-old one of your team leaders, but that is the fact of the matter. Your team leaders buying in is so big, and buying into their weaknesses is so big. And I think he's done that in every facet.
And to your point, talking about Luka Doncic, I would much rather have Paolo defensively than I would, Luka Doncic. So there's a little bit of give and take there. I want to talk a little bit here about the playoff series. So wasn't the most encouraging start, right? The loss on the road, you're down 0-2, but then it was just as encouraging to tie that series. Paolo, big game 5. Franz, has the opportunity to win that game at the end. You lose, you're coming back home. You haven't had stakes like that in a very long time. You win game 6. You're up 18 on the road in game 7. What did you learn about this team, and what were your big takeaways from that playoff series?
Yeah, I think the first thing is they're young. And I think games 1 and 2 especially, you could feel how young they were. Even like even Jamal Mosley, like I think he made some tactical errors or overthought some things early in the series. I was not a fan of starting Jonathan Isaac at center in those 2 games. I just thought it was just not a good matchup. I thought him having to deal with Jared Allen was going to take away what makes him effective as a defender, and that's his ability to kind of roam and block shots and protect the rim. Obviously, Allen had those 2 big rebounding games in games 1 and 2, and so I think that was, I am knocking Jamal Mosley, but I'm not knocking Jamal Mosley. I do think that decision cost the Magic a game and a half. And again, in a series that tight, that matters. They were just young, and I think even the players admitted, game 1, they got a little wide-eyed, especially early on. They fell down big in that game, I believe, early on, and had to fight their way back to make the score look more competitive than the game actually was. They got a little wide-eyed, and got a little, had to kind of absorb the energy of the moment a little bit. And so my first takeaway from the series is that they showed how young they are, and they showed that their inexperience was evident. But I think we all have to be really impressed with, like you said, their ability to fight back. You don't know what you don't know, and they learned a lot about that, but they didn't let that overcome them. They didn't let that define the series or knock them out. They showed that, yes, they are a flawed team, and there are things they have to correct and things they have to fix to compete at a higher level. But you could throw a punch at them and they're not going to knock back. They're not going to get knocked out. They're going to punch back. And I think that is something to be really proud of. And I don't think their game 7 loss and how they lost game 7 was for lack of effort or, letting go of the rope. I think they were pulling hard. It was just, the moment was big. Game 7s are tough. And, they had that really strong start, and then the shots stopped falling. And that's, this team's ultimate weakness is they're not the greatest offensive team in the world. Cleveland found the momentum that they needed. Donovan Mitchell's been around the block. If there's one thing that we know, everyone in Cleveland asked me why Jalen Suggs wasn't guarding Donovan Mitchell. It's just Donovan Mitchell's going to do what Donovan Mitchell's going to do. It's not like Gary Harris is a bad defender. Donovan Mitchell's going to get his. The key is to contain Darius Garland. And if you look back at Cleveland's wins, Darius Garland's really good in the wins, not so good in losses. I think he had 21 in game 5 in the first half of game 5. Had that big 3 at the end of game set toward the end of game 7. It was just, the rope started slipping, and despite the Magic's best efforts to grab hold and pull it back, it just kept slipping on them. And that, again, that's something that you have to learn how to deal with that momentum and deal with the pressure of those moments. Everyone could feel it in those games. And Donovan Mitchell's been in those moments so many times, it doesn't faze him. There were a few times this summer I went back and watched Franz Wagner's shots, and you could see frustration on his face. You could see, that eagerness and that willingness to win, but just not being able to find that center again. And again, that's something you learn with experience. So I think that's, to me, the biggest takeaway. It's not that the Magic don't have things they need to adjust and strategies they need to change and obviously things they need to get better at. But I think their inexperience was a big factor in that series. And, you play that series again tomorrow, again, who knows what Jared Allen would affect that. But, it wouldn't surprise me if you coin flip that series back. It was that tight. And the Magic kind of established themselves as hey, we're here. Don't overlook us. But they're as young as we all expected them to be.
I am going to jump in here and interrupt my conversation with our friend Philip Rossman-Reich to tell you all about Jam Hot Chicken. Our friends over there proudly serving the city beautiful. Jam Hot Chicken is bringing Jam's culture and hot chicken to the heart of Winter Park. Jam Hot Chicken, if you don't know, now you know, is a Nashville and LA inspired hot chicken shack, locally owned and operated in Winter Park, Florida, located at 400 West New England Avenue, Suite 13 in Hannibal Square. Follow Jam Hot Chicken at Jam Hot Chicken on all social media, and check out jamhotchickenfl.com to access their menu, online ordering, music playlists, and all things Jam Hot, now available on Uber Eats. So if you're thinking, man, I want a Sando or I want the box from Jam Hot Chicken, but I don't feel like leaving the house, go to your Uber Eats app. If you're local to Winter Park, get it delivered straight to your door. And this past weekend, they did their version of the hot honey pepper pimento chicken sandwich, whatever it is they're doing over at Chick-fil-A. Jam Hot Chicken is doing it better. Follow them on social media so that you're updated anytime they do some sort of special offering like that. I didn't get my hands, and I'm not even going to say what I didn't get to do with that sandwich. That would just be weird. But again, shout out to our friends over at Jam Hot Chicken. If you have not tried them, we're not lying about how good the food is. Everybody, after they have jam, they hit me up and they say, I thought you guys were lying. I thought you were overhyping it, but it's just as good as you guys said. I promise you, we are not lying about how good Jam Hot Chicken is. Truly, some of the best food in Central Florida, in my opinion, on the planet. So be sure to go and check out our friends over at Jam Hot Chicken. Again, 400 West New England Avenue, Suite 13 in Hannibal Square. This episode is also brought to you by Bowie the Dawn, Bill Fulton, Bobby Skinner. Shout out to Bobby Skinner, my friend who hosts the Talking Giants podcast. A big blue Giants W this past Sunday. So shout out to Bobby Skinner. Next Napa and Gear 95 Shred. You would be asking, who are these people? Well, I told you who Bobby Skinner is. Who are these other folks? They are some of our elite and Hall of Fame tier patrons. You can find us over at patreon.com/the6man show. Patreon essentially is a platform where you can support the creators that you like and the content that you consume from them, and you help them continue to create that content. We cannot do what we do without our patrons and without their financial support. So if you like what we're doing here, you want to help us in this mission of growing the Orlando Magic fan base, making fans more passionate, hopefully making them more knowledgeable. That part is arguable, but you can find us over at patreon.com/the6man show. And let's get back to our conversation with Philip Rossman-Reich. And as quiet as that building was in the first half, the moment that the fan base sort of got back and the energy came back into that building is, for me, when I felt like, okay, we're probably in a little bit of trouble here, Philip. The last thing that I want to ask you about.
I remember turning to Mike Bianchi when Sam Merrill hit those 2 threes, and I was just like, if they don't start the third quarter on a big run, they're in trouble. Like you could there's that timeout. They were up 18. There's a big cohort of Magic fans right behind the bench. Everyone in that building's quiet. All you hear is "Let's go Magic" chants. Like it was surreal. And then Beryl hits those 2 threes. The crowd gets back into it. And you're just, again, and this is something you learn. Like I would tell Jason Beatty about this all the time. How you end quarters matters. That start of the third quarter was the game. And I think Cleveland went on a 12-0 run or 12-4 run or something to start that quarter. And that was the game. It was just like, okay, the rope is slipping and now you're in a fight and you can't kind of reach back and grab it. You don't have that well to get back to.
Learning moments.
Definitely. Yep.
So last thing I want to ask you about last season before we start to look at the off season and look a little bit ahead. What were some of your favorite moments from this past season?
Yeah, obviously just besides the winning. Honestly, like so much like it that does sound cliche, but it's just like being around all the Magic staffers and who, I've worked with, and like I said, like we can be professional, but those are still all friends. Like those are still all people that, we've been through a lot of bad basketball together. The excitement in their eyes and just like, I remember like standing and talking to a few Magic staffers before that Celtics game in the in-season tournament. And like, it's a matinee game. It's NBA TV. It's the in-season tournament. Like, is that really important? Who knows? But I think we all kind of sat there and asked each other, like, this is probably the biggest game in this building since the play, either the 2019 playoffs or probably since Dwight. And a lot of us were like, yeah, this is probably the biggest game that's been in this building since Dwight. Like that game, especially that game, the Denver game was just so huge. Obviously like Shaq's jersey retirement was really, really special. I'm very, very glad that they quickly did media after that Thunder game. I wish the game was better. The Thunder are a very, very good team. So no shame in losing to them. And then I think the Magic put on a good show on national TV. I wish they had more national TV moments. But yeah, just like that feeling of winning is just really special. It shouldn't, hopefully it doesn't get old. Like I would urge everyone, like, yes, we're expected to win now. We should act like we've been there. Don't ever lose the joy of winning. Like winning is fun. It is good to win. Just because, you want to win more, you should be striving to win more, but winning is fun. That was just really special. And you could just kind of feel that energy every night. Like, again, even when they lost some games, you could just feel that every night that like this team expects to win tonight. Like this, it's not going to take a miracle to win this game. For me personally, like this was the first time I did road games with the Magic. I went down to Miami a couple times. I did a New York, Atlanta road trip. I did the New Orleans, Charlotte road trip. And then I did the playoffs. Being on the road was a really fun experience. It re-energized me just because it was something new. And just to see everyone in a kind of different environment in different cities. And to be there when they silenced the crowd, being in the Garden and hearing them silent, seeing Paolo hit that big shot to quiet the Garden was when the Magic were kind of at the depths of some of their injury issues and their illness issues. It was a lot of fun. This team just had so much fight and so much hunger to win. That's always going to stick with me. And if there's one thing I hope that the Magic maintain is that attitude of, we have to go out in there and take this. Like everyone doesn't think we can do this. We've got to show everyone we can do this. And that feeling permeated every moment of the season.
Let's go to the offseason. What for you were the Magic's biggest goals? And then how would you evaluate how they did this summer?
Yeah. I mean, I think the Magic's biggest goals were still to find players who could clear the pathway for Paolo and Franz and their development. Again, we love all the players. This is Paolo and Franz's team. And the goal for the Magic should be, how do we make their lives easier? And how do we maximize what they do? And so I think, for me, the biggest takeaway from the playoffs was that the Magic needed another playmaker so that Paolo didn't have to create everything by himself. They stuck Evan Mobley on Franz Wagner and Franz struggled to get around him. And so that took away a playmaker. And so Paolo was essentially I told people it feels like he's banging his head against a brick wall and putting cracks in that wall, to be perfectly fair. But especially game 7, the scoring had slowed down. He was trying, they were double and triple teaming him. He was trying to pass the ball to open shooters, and they just weren't there. It's just like, someone needs to get Paolo an easy shot here. Like, someone needs to set Paolo up with a shot. And so I do think finding a playmaker should have been one of the goals for the Magic this year. So, I don't think I think the Magic did a good job this offseason in adding Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Tristan da Silva. I think they did a good job setting the table so that Paolo and Franz can continue to explore the limits of their game. Like, I don't think we know what they are. Like, Franz is still improving as a playmaker. I was really impressed with how he looked at the Olympics as a passer. Paolo showed hints that he can be a really good point forward too, and have the ball in his hands a lot more. And I think even Paolo said in that Washington Post article, when he talked about we need a table setter, he was like, but I don't want to give up the ball completely. Like, I like the ball in my hands. Like, don't take the ball away from me. And so, I don't think the Magic addressed those playmaking issues, but I do think that they, adding an elite shooter like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, betting on internal improvement with so many young players who played so well last year, they, I think, put themselves in a position to continue to explore where Paolo and Franz are, allow them to continue to develop, while still having the ability to go out and add those pieces when they feel like they've hit their ceiling. So I think it was a summer to set up the future more than it was to say 2025 is our year. We're going for it. That's not what the Magic wanted to do. I think they did a good job, assembling trade pieces for the trade that is probably going to come in the next year or two. But they didn't solve the issues of why they lost in the playoffs, in my opinion, which, could lead to some frustration this year.
We talked about Franz. Feels like the conversations around his shooting struggles were a year-long conversation in the playoffs, and even the Olympics to an extent really didn't do a lot to quiet those concerns. But the max contract, $224 million, thoughts on that, and thoughts on your concerns or maybe lack of concerns about his shooting moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's, first off, like, the max contract, you either believe in the guy or you don't. Like, Paolo's going to get a max contract. I don't think anyone would argue with that. With where Franz is at, like, I think we saw this throughout the league this year. You overinvest in guys off their rookie contract and then try to reel them back in on that second contract and say hey, we can't pay you, 35% of the cap, or we won't have a winning team. What's more important to you? This is when you pay the guy. And I think that, the fact that Scotty Barnes, Evan Mobley, Cade Cunningham all got the same contract as Franz, I think that's just the general trend. So I think that's as much the cost of doing business as anything else. Franz is going to get better. And I know we're all obsessed and worried about the shooting, and I think that's going to be important, but take out the shooting, and he had the best season of his career by far last year. Not even close. My favorite stat that I've been telling people since I had to retire, the Steve Francis stat, is the last time the Magic had two players average 20 points per game in the same season was Shaq and Penny in 1996. Paolo and Franz nearly did it last year. Franz was at 19.7 last year. They're going to do it next year. If whatever your favorite sports book puts that on the table, bet that one. Whatever the odds are. Minus, if it should be minus 140. It should be pretty that. Yeah, that's going to happen. I think you pay that price. And I think you bet that Franz will get better. Again, the FIBA ball's different. The FIBA court's different. The 3-point line's closer in. He had games where he made plenty of threes. And I know some people were worried that he was fatigued and didn't want him to play in the Olympics. The Olympics ended in early August. He's had 6 weeks to get ready for training camp. He'll be fine. And actually, I think him and Mo came back to the U.S. much earlier than they usually would in a non-FIBA season. The FIBA tournaments like to run very, very late in the summer. So, Franz is either your guy or he's not. And, again, I think that making that investment was the right call for the team.
There's another contract that's sort of out there, right? We don't have any updates on it. Nobody really knows what's going on. Maybe you know what's going on. I don't know. Maybe you'll break news here on the Six Man Show. Who knows? Jalen Suggs is a deal that I thought would get done pretty quickly, as we went into the offseason. It's not been done yet. They still have 3.5, almost 4 weeks to get a deal done.
A month.
But what are your thoughts on that? Are you concerned about that at all?
I'm not concerned. First and foremost, like even if they don't get a deal done this summer, he's not going anywhere. Like he's so important to this team. He's someone that you pay. And even if he hits restricted free agency, the Magic are matching. So the first and foremost part of it, I am not concerned about Jalen Suggs being in another team's uniform for the next 4 years. Like he is the things they are discussing are 4 or 5 years. Should we front load this thing? Should we have an option on 1 year? They're probably like, Jeff Weltman, I think, said at Summer League, we're very hopeful we can get it over to the finish line. Like he talked very openly about it, which is very strange for Jeff Weltman to talk openly about anything. My bet is they wanted to see where he's at this summer. They get a couple of weeks of training camp and the preseason to really see where he's at. He's had one good year, a very, very good year. But he had 2 very injury-filled seasons early in his career. So I get the Magic maybe being a little hesitant and saying, like, let's see how he looks in camp, and then we'll, give him that extra $1.5 million. But kind of like Franz Wagner, it's like, you're either going to do it or you're not. Like at this point, you know who he is, you know what he's about, you know what he gives this team and how important he is to this team. He's either a core player on your team or he's not. And maybe that point guard question might pause them a little bit because they are putting a lot on his plate that he hasn't really done before with this team before they commit that kind of long-term future to him. But again, like, how many times did Jamal Mosley say Jalen Suggs is the head of the snake of our defense? And that's the identity of this team. I would say it's probably 65-35, 70-30 that he gets a deal done before the deadline on October 21st. The nature of the league and the nature of this business is you either get things done early or get things done late. Deadlines create action. It wouldn't surprise me if they're waiting to see what he looks a little like in camp a little bit, just to make sure, just to double check and make sure. But I think he's going to sign an extension before the deadline. I think something will get done. And a lot of the rumors are $28-29 million. That's about where I have him. So I think it's literally just let's cross some T's and dot some I's and get this thing done.
Yeah, sounds like a good number. When you look at the deals that especially were made over the course of this offseason, that's probably where he's going to end up falling. I agree with you. Philip, as this episode comes out, we are 1 week from Media Day, one of my favorite days on the Magic calendar of the year. First day of school vibes, you're laying out your outfit the night before, you're giddy, you're excited. What are some of your favorite things about Media Day? Some questions maybe that you're looking forward to getting answers to. What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, it's first day of school. Just seeing everybody in the building, like seeing you, seeing all the reporter friends, seeing the players, like, they're cool guys. Like, you've talked with a lot of the players. They're genuinely good guys. And just being back in the building around the guys again is really exciting. Like, honestly, like, I'm happy Colorado is coming to town this weekend because I want to run into Mose on the sideline at the bounce house on Saturday, which I'm sure he will be there.
And Tristan.
And Tristan will be there too. I don't know Tristan as well. Maybe Mose can introduce me. Yeah, it's just like everyone's optimistic. Everyone's happy. Everyone's happy to see each other. They aren't annoyed by each other quite yet. It's just, like, it's basketball. Like, it's just, I'm just excited to have basketball back in our lives. And like, everybody is so happy to get things started. I think there's especially a lot of anticipation for this season because of what they did last year. And, the point I've been trying to make to people is you can't assume you're going to repeat last year's success. You got to earn it. And so I think that's what I'm most interested in asking the players is, what's the talk of doing it again? Like how do you replicate success now that everyone knows you're coming? I think Jamal Mosley said, everyone knows we're coming now. Like, no one's going to be surprised by our success anymore. So it's what, the big thing I want to know is, like, you've had 4 months to stew on it. What did you learn from the playoffs last year? What did you learn from the experience last year that you're going to take into this year? And like, how do you get into that mindset of we've got to do this again, or making it as fresh as it was last year? I think that's what's really interesting. And I think certainly for Jeff and certainly for Jamal, like Jeff Weltman and Jamal Mosley, like the question that I really want to know from them is like, you have these expectations now of being back in the playoffs. How do you balance still letting this young roster grow and make mistakes? And while you're dealing with knowing how good this team can be, and obviously they can get better, but now we have a baseline of what they're capable of. How do you balance allowing them to explore and experiment when you know what the end product needs to be? And I think that's going to be one of the interesting like parts of the formula for the Magic this year.
Something that we've been talking about on the show really since not even the season ended, but since the regular season ended, there was the excitement of the playoffs, but it's just like, hey, we were playing with house money all year this year. As much fun as this was, and as much fun as winning and hopefully more winning will be in the future, the expectations are here now. There's not this like innocent level of, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening sort of thing. Like there's going to be a different level of stress and expectation put on this team night in and night out. They all talked at the end of the playoff series about how important it is. The regular season games in November are just as important as the games in March. Do you think we're going to have a different kind of vibe at Media Day? Like I'm expecting this to be like last season was awesome. We're glad we achieved what we achieved, but like it's time to get back to work.
Yeah, I mean, I think it wouldn't surprise me if there is a level of seriousness about what they're doing about them at Media Day, where they're like, okay, we know the path in front of us now. But I mean, I don't think they're going to lose the playful vibe. Like honestly, like if they're like all business, I'll be a little concerned because like what made them successful last year is they were like a college team. Like everyone said,
drastic of a change.
Yeah. But like to that point, that 3-game losing streak in that stretch in December where, they're sitting at, like they just think of last season, like they were the 2 seed through November. They had that stretch in December and January where they really struggled, and they were sitting at the 7 or 8 seed. And like I had friends of mine who were like, the Magic are going to be the 7 or 8 seed. We were we got to get back up to the 4. And I would be like, look, it's a long season. They're hurt right now. The schedule is going to come back around for them at the end. Do not worry. It's going to be fine. And it turned out, I was at that Charlotte game.
They played with their food a little bit.
They played with their food a little bit at the end. They got close. They got 1 game away and got a little fat and happy. But like back last year, those losing streaks happened. We were like, okay, we're still in the race. It's fine. Again, we knew the schedule was going to come back around. I don't think the schedule comes back around the way that it did last year. Now you hit that, we have that tough stretch in December and that tough stretch in January. The Magic struggle to win those games, or if the Magic last year had the worst record among playoff teams against teams with records above 500. That's the area the Magic have to be better at. They got to win those games. They got to win. They got to, not that they couldn't beat good teams last year. They beat Cleveland twice. They beat Boston. They beat New York 3 times. Like they beat Indiana twice. They beat Denver twice. They beat good teams last year. Let's not pretend they didn't. But they got to win those games more regularly. Like we got national TV games this year, and to the players, they may say, "Oh, it's just 1 game," but in the battle of perception, in the battle of what matters, like winning those games matter. Like you got Cleveland twice on national TV. Those games are going to be really, really important. And not only that, like the standings are going to be tight like they were last year. So every game has significance. And the question is, how do they respond to all of that? Do they? It's very much a question of, I don't know if you're familiar with this, the Pat Riley problem of more. As you get more successful, individuals stop playing for the team and start worrying about more for them. I don't think that'll be a problem with this team. I think that these guys are very much bought in together, and I think the Magic have very carefully curated that continuity because they know how much everyone's invested in the group as much as they are in themselves. But you hit that first road bump, you hit that first little losing skid, a 6 of 8 or whatever. How do you respond to that? Last year, they stuck together. They closed ranks. They fought really hard. They found that spark again. They got back in the race. They got the 5 seed. This year, they'll be like, they might be like, how, like we should be this. We know we can be this. Why can't we get there? That's going to be the big challenge for them because, Steve Clifford used to say this all the time. Every season's different. Every season you got to start from square one. Continuity helps maybe with the speed of picking things up, but you gotta rebuild everything from the ground up, and that's gonna be the biggest challenge for this team because they've never had to do that. They've never had to start over and meet an expectation of something they did before.
I wanted to talk about that next is expectations. What are your expectations for this team going into the season? Can they, maybe not the very top of the Eastern Conference, but the upper echelon of the Eastern Conference, can they contend there? Where do you see the Magic ending up in the standings?
Yeah, I mean, they absolutely can be the 2 or the 3 seed if everything goes really right. I mean, obviously last year, they were the 2 seed with a week to go in the season, on that last Sunday after they beat Chicago. It's going to be tight. And that's been something I've been stressing to everybody. Like the 2 through the 7 seed is probably going to be determined. 2 through the 7 or 2 through the 8 seed is going to be 3 or 4 games. And it's, when the Magic arrive in Atlanta in April, that game, a win could put them in the 3 seed or the 4 seed, and a loss could drop them to the 7 or the 8 seed and have to go through the play-in tournament. So I think it's really important to keep that in perspective that, it's going to be 1 or 2, you can't, I'm trying not to put an expectation of they need to be this seed to consider the season a success or whatever, because they, that could be determined by something very random. Like, Franz Wagner sprained his ankle, missed a week and a half last year. Never happened before. They went like 1-3 in those games. That cost them the 2 seed. Like that nearly cost them the 5 seed. So I think you have to resist the urge to say, match 47 wins, match the 5 seed. That's the goal. I think the goal for the Orlando Magic is obviously make the playoffs. Like the expectation is to make the playoffs. This is a playoff team. They're a playoff team for the next 5-6 years. Like that's the bottom line baseline. The next part should be competitive. Be competitive in the playoffs. Give yourself a chance to win, which they did last year, obviously. Obviously, like you get to a game 7, the next step is win a series. That's all matchup dependent. Like they could be the 6th seed, which I think would be a pretty successful season, and face Philadelphia. And Philadelphia is just a really bad matchup for this team, for whatever reason. Embiid is Embiid. Like Wendell Carter does about as well as you can do with Joel Embiid, but Joel Embiid. And now they have Paul George, and now they have Tyrese Maxey. That's gonna be a tough matchup. Milwaukee has historically been kind of a tough matchup if Giannis is healthy. You get Indiana, like I'd say, yeah, you should probably beat Indiana in a series, or if you get Cleveland again, like, yeah, beat Cleveland, but you got to kind of let the season play out and figure out where the fault lines are and figure out where the matchups are. I think the goal should be, we need to see this team closer to winning a series than maybe we thought they were last year, regardless of the result. I've kind of told people, like, I think the Magic are a better team today than they were last year. They're a better team today than they were on May 5th. It would not surprise me if they win like 45, 44 games and are the 6 or 7 seed, even though they're better, because there's still a lot of questions. Like Anthony Black and Jalen Suggs are going to be running a lot more point guard. They didn't do any of that last year. Like the Magic, like very specifically took the ball out of Jalen Suggs' hands and did not want him running point. They're going to put a lot more trust in him, and there's going to be mistakes made. They're going to lose some games maybe because of that. People ask, people are so concerned about the shooting, and the shooting's concerning. And I think KCP helps, and I think Suggs another year and Paolo another year. I think the shooting will be better. The real key to the Magic being a better offense, they can't be 29th in the league in turnover rate. They had a 15% turnover rate last year, and they get a lot of that back with their defense, but you lose a lot of shot opportunities. You want Paolo to be more efficient. You want, you want more 3-point attempts. You want to be better in transition. Stop turning the ball over. Like that to me, that is the biggest key for this team. But, Paolo is 21 and going to be playing a lot of point forward. He's going to still turn the ball over a lot. Hopefully he'll be better, but he's going to turn the ball over a lot. Jalen Suggs is going to be playing point guard for the first time since his rookie year when he averaged 4 turnovers per game. He's going to turn the ball over a little bit. So you got to give some space for this team to make mistakes still. And I think that's really important to remember, that this is not the final product. As much as I think we all want to see this team win, and again, playoffs or bust. Like if you don't make the playoffs, that is a failure. Even if you are the 7 seed in the play-in tournament and lose those 2 games at home, that's a failure. You've got to be in the field. You got to give yourself a chance. Miami showed us a couple years ago, get in the field, you have yourself a chance. Dallas made the finals as a 5 seed last year. I don't think seeding matters to make the path easier, and winning at home the Magic defend Kia Center really well. Seeding isn't as important. These teams are really, really close. The Magic were capable of winning in Cleveland in Game 7. Like I will say yes. If the Magic had Game 7 at Kia Center, they probably win that series. But they should have won the game in Cleveland. Like they were good enough to win the game in Cleveland. And so it's to me, it's about give this team room to develop and grow, still maintain your playoff spot, continue to find where the fault lines are, continue to find where you need to get better, and continue to build toward opening your window in the next 2-3 years when you make that bigger trade that kind of cements the roles and what everyone's capable of.
You talk about turnovers. I think if you take last season and you can just copy and paste that, if everything else is equal and the Magic can improve on turnovers and free throw percentage, making their free throws, you're going to pick up a few more wins there.
You're going to end the streak, which needs to end. And if you don't know what the streak is, the Magic have had a bottom 10 offense by offensive rating every year since Dwight Howard. It is the longest such streak since the NBA since they started having play-by-play data to track this stuff. The Magic need to be out of the bottom 10 in offensive rating. And they're not that far away, but to that point, it's turnovers and free throws, stuff you can control. Jeff Wellman loves to point out after January 1st, the Magic had the 15th best 3-point field goal percentage in the league. And that's not an insignificant amount of time. But I would counter that and say, well, the Magic's offensive rating was the same for the full season as it was after January 1st. And they only moved up from 23rd to 22nd overall. Right. 3-point shooting is important. Do not get that wrong. But that's not why the Magic's offense is not good. The Magic's offense is not good because they give away a lot of possessions and leave a lot of points on the board.
And with that, you want to see the volume increase a bit more as well. So the last thing that I want to ask you here, and you've touched on this a little bit with the last question that I asked you, but Kevin and myself, we've been talking about the importance of keeping long-term perspective, that even if this season we get to the end of it, it doesn't on paper look like it gone as well as maybe we had hoped. That doesn't mean it's time to burn down the building and start over, right? Like Kobe Price, we talked to him a few times on the show, and he always says success is not always linear, and that's just important to keep in mind. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm very much the same way. I mean, I think that it is still very, very important to give a player like Paolo Banchero the room to make mistakes. I know that seems weird to say, but if you're playing at the top levels of the league, you can't make mistakes. You're in it. I think that and I think Magic fans know this firsthand, when you make panicked moves, you make bad decisions. You trade Tobias Harris for Brandon Jennings. You go for Serge Ibaka. You're trying to get this short, as Jeff Wellman always likes to say, you go for the sugar rush. You have to understand that this is a longer project. I know Magic fans are a little gun shy about their free agents and about their stars leaving, but think of it this way. Franz Wagner has 6 years left on his contract with the Magic. He plays next season and then has a 5-year deal. Paolo Banchero has 2 years and then a 5-year contract coming up. The Magic have 6 or 7 years to figure this out. And if they can't figure it out in 6 or 7 years, that's a problem. We know where some of the fault lines probably are with this team, but it's still about finding the right guys and the right ways to make this team better. And frankly, we don't still know what Paolo and Franz are. Like, they're still so young. They've shown so many hints of so many different things. The Magic have to give them the space to figure themselves out, to kind of find themselves. And, again, this is a long journey. I know people probably hate this, but 2030 is very much the time the Magic are going to be fighting for a championship. That's their window. Their window is probably 2027 to 2031. And then, obviously, like, if you're doing things the right way and you're competing for championships, Paolo and Franz are going to stay longer than that 6 to 7 year window that we're talking about. And so you have to keep doing the right things. You have to keep making progress. You have to keep kind of pushing the team forward. I used to say this a lot during the rebuild. You're only stuck if there's no way forward. The way I look at what the Magic did this summer is they left the pathway open for Paolo and Franz to keep expanding and growing their games. and find the limits of what they are. If we find that limit, if we hit that ceiling, then we can adjust. The Magic also, I think, did a really good job setting up their contracts to be able to make trades now that they're an over the cap team. You know, all the deals that people were pitching me during the summer, it'd be like, yeah, that's great, but I can't give up Wendell Carter if I'm not getting a center back. Or, you know, every Bleacher Report fake trade that was out there had the Magic trading Jalen Suggs or Jonathan Isaac. And I think all of us were like, they're not doing that. The Magic did have cap room to absorb more salary and trades, but they didn't have the ability without using their draft capital and pushing a lot more chips in than I think they were comfortable doing to make those trades. The Magic have that now. They have all their draft capital. They have movable contracts that are big. Like Mo Wagner and Gary Harris up their contract. Like Gary Harris and that Denver pick is, you know, if the Magic do need to do something at the deadline, Gary Harris and that Denver pick is going to get them something. I don't know what it is yet, but it'll get them something. They have guys they can move around a lot easier now to make that trade that pushes them over the top or gets them to that next level. They also have players on their roster that can do it themselves. And I think they wanted to spend this offseason letting those players see if they can do it. And, you know, we'll see how it goes. And again, they could have a very similar season to last year. I'm expecting a very similar season to last year. Maybe that gets them the 4 seed. Maybe that gets them the 7 seed. The margins are just super narrow. And I think we have to realize that the league, the East especially, is very, very tight.
That's essentially what we've been saying. If the season doesn't go the way that we want it to, but you can still see the path forward, that's what's most important. And you joked off air is, you know, your infamous line. Now, this season isn't necessarily about this season, so that will continue to be true until it's really time to go all in.
Yeah. Look, it's more about this season than last season was. Like, yes, they need to make the playoffs. Like last year being in the play-in I had the Magic last year as the 9 seed in the play-in. Like I thought they were going to be a play-in team. I didn't think they were quite going to find consistency yet. You know, that would have been successful for me. Like again, like the Magic could be, you know, the 7 seed and it'd be a very encouraging season in a lot of ways, but frustrating in others. It's a mixture of both. Like I think that's the thing people kind of forget too. Like again, you said it earlier, growth isn't linear. Like, you know, maybe like Jalen Suggs doesn't shoot 39% from 3. Maybe it's only 37%. And that is a big kind of hindrance to the team's growth. And so now the Magic have to sit there and figure out, you know, we signed Jalen Suggs, we're invested in him, but maybe Kentavious Caldwell-Pope isn't the right guy to put next to him. And we have to find a shooting point guard that can manage the team a little bit better. You only find those faults out if you go through some pain. You know, look at the journey the Boston Celtics went on. Like there was a lot of pain before they got to the top of the mountain. And I know they're Boston. They can probably afford to make some mistakes that the Magic can't afford to make. But even Dallas, look at Dallas. Like how much pain did Dallas go through? How many mistakes did Dallas make before they found the group that worked and clicked? And now they got to do it again. How much pain did Denver go through before they got to the top of the mountain? How much pain did Milwaukee go through before they got in the top of the mountain? I made this point after Germany lost in the bronze medal game. Pain is part of the process. Like disappointment is part of the process. The Magic are going to fall short a lot. And the question that Jeff Weltman and Paolo and Franz and everyone on the roster is going to have to answer, and they're going to have to answer that to some extent because they fell short last year too. Like they lost in a game 7 they should have won. The question is, how do you respond to that? How do you get better from that? How do you improve off of that? And like that's going to be the challenge until you get to the top of the mountain, and then you got to do it all over again and win it again.
There's a philosophy that I'm a big fan of is like choose your hard, right? Losing a heartbreaking playoff series is really hard. So is winning 22 games. Like choose your hard.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'll take the heartbreaking playoff series all day, every
day. My favorite Scott Skiles quote, and I think about this so much. And like, this is something that's going to be very relevant today, you know, for this Magic team, because the returns diminish as you get closer to the top. It is a lot harder to go from 35 wins to 45 wins than it is from 25 to 35. The Magic did the 35 to 45 last year. Imagine how hard it is to go from 45 to 55 wins. Like it's like the margins are so narrow for 10 extra wins at this stage. Like it's easy to go from 25 to 35. Like that's nothing. These next 10 wins to get to 52, 55, 56 wins, to be a 60-win team, that's a huge challenge and a steep mountain to climb. But, it's exciting to try and climb that mountain for a change. Instead of seeing it off in the distance and being like, I wonder what it's like up there.
Well, hopefully we'll find out soon enough here and get to the top of the mountain finally. But Philip Rossman,
by 2030.
2030. We're holding baby. You to it, Alex Martins. But no, Philip, I appreciate
he's going to be a prophet.
The closer we get, when he said that a few years ago, it was like, oh my gosh, 2030, good grief. Now 2030 doesn't sound so bad at this point in the game. But
yeah,
Philip, wanted to just thank you not only for joining the show, but everything that you've done and everything that you've been doing for a decade plus now in covering this team. Just appreciate everything you do. You do such a great job, and I would never take away your journalistic integrity, but you don't fool me. I know there's a massive Magic fan in there, and that's the thing that I love about you.
Look at all that stuff behind me.
I know it. Appreciate you, Philip.
Look at all that stuff in the background.
Tell our listeners where they can find you, where they can find your coverage, where they can find the pod, all of that.
Yeah, the best place to find my work is at orlandomagicdaily.com. We'll be, hopefully kicking into overdrive once the season starts. You can check out my podcast. I am a 5-day-a-week podcast, Monday through Friday, with weekend episodes when there's games at Locked On Magic. You can find that wherever you download podcasts, as well as on YouTube if you want to see me yammer on about the Magic. And I also have a Patreon page for even more Magic content, the Orlando Magic Hub at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub.
Philip Rossman-Reich, appreciate the time, and I will see you in a week, my friend.
See you in a week. Looking forward to it. Have your best clothes on for picture day.
Let's do it. Thanks, Philip. A big shout out to my friend Philip Rossman-Reich for joining the show today. Talked about a lot of things going all the way back to last season. Some of you are maybe tired of hearing us talk about last season, but I have a feeling that we're going to be talking about last season for a very long time, so get used to that. Missed Kevin Tucker today in the co-host chair, but again, best well wishes to my brother. Continue to rest up. The seat will be here when you get back. Don't you worry about that. In the meantime, Kevin's probably not going to be back for a few episodes, so we're going to continue to have guests here on the pod over the next couple episodes and over the next few weeks. Really, really excited about that. But that is going to do it for this one. For Jonathan Osborne, nobody else right now. But again, thank you to Philip Rossman-Reich. This has been the Sixth Man Show. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will catch you guys on the next one. See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Sixth Man Show. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and Spotify to get new episodes downloaded directly to your phone. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to give us a 5-star rating and a review. It helps out the show a lot. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Sixth Man Show. We'll catch you guys next time. Go Magic!